Warbles on a lot to YouTube with the conclusion of round table discussion.
By making these people feel as if they're being excluded from
sorry, Tony. The Attorney General, George Brown, has got a real ovation from the Greens and Labor Party, something he obviously doesn't experience much. But many others, somewhat, to be fair here, they responded positively to the point that Pauline Hanson was trying to make about the burqa. I mean, how do we have that conversation about the place of Islam and some of its principles without descending into farce or conflict?
Well, it's very difficult in this climate of censoriousness, I think. There is, and we've seen this in the last year with issues relating to not necessarily Islam, but disadvantage in the Indigenous community. When people have tried to speak up about that, they've been leapt upon, and 18C's been thrown around. We've tried to get over the 18C. The sort of ridiculous constraints that 18C puts on people where they're not even allowed to say things that might offend a minority group. This makes the climate in Australia very difficult to have frank discussions about certain groups in society and the impact they might have on the broader society or in individuals within that group. So I think it's difficult. I agree with Tony. When I see the burqa, which I've almost never seen in Australia, I feel deeply troubled. I feel very sorry for the women who have to wear that. As a woman living in a free Western liberal democracy, that is not a sight I'd like to see. But that said, Australia, like the United States and the UK, given we have fundamentally free societies where the law basically allows you to do anything unless there are particular laws to prevent you, unlike the European continental system where you're prevented from doing things unless the law enables you to do things. We haven't seen banning of certain clothing in a general sense in public spaces. I think there is argument that certain places like courts, like parliament, like schools or public institutions, that type of full face covering would not be appropriate. And that's a conversation I think we should have. The way Pauline Hanson has launched this debate, it's a very extreme way of launching this debate that puts people in either camp in a very sort of polarizing way. I think there's a much better and important conversation to have, and I hope that we can have that in a respectful way. But I think the current legislative framework and culture of political correctness in Australia at the moment will constrain that.
Okay, well, let's turn to this citizenship saga. It rolled on this week. It claimed more high-profile scalps, including the leadership of the Nationals Party. Barnaby Joyce, he turns out to be part Kiwi, and then of course Deputy Leader Fiona Nash is a Scot apparently. And the latest to add his name to the dual citizenship list is Senator Nick Xenophon.
I have received advice from the United Kingdom Home Office that they consider I'm a British overseas citizen, a historical category of citizenship formerly known as a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies. The UK Home Office has advised this is on the basis that my father Theo was born in Cyprus when it was under British occupation and migrated to Australia in 1951, over 66 years ago.
How is this happening? I mean, like Georgina, I ran for Liberal Party pre-selection in 2009 for Bradfield, and I'll never forget there were 17 candidates for the pre-selection, and I was one of the front runners. So the Liberal Party establishment made it clear to me, because I was born in Dallas, Texas, so I had dual citizenship, American and Australian. They said, if you get this job as a candidate, you've got to disown renounce your American citizenship. Same thing happened to Paul Fletcher, who actually won the pre-selection. He was born in England. How is this happening, given everything we know about how politics runs? Tony?
It's unfathomable to me.
Extraordinary.
I mean, what are these party organisations doing? Surely there's a checklist that they have to go through, or they should go through, just to establish the bona fides of their candidates. I mean, it's not just a due diligence thing. It should be an absolute formality. Now, I'm not, far be it from me to urge the High Court to engage in any judicial activism, but I think Section 44 of the Constitution doesn't really, is not contemporary, let's put it that way. And one would hope that a common sense view will be taken on all of this. Otherwise, Parliament will be rendered will become even more chaotic. That's possible. I'm sure there are others in the national Parliament who don't who are whose nationality is questionable. So I don't think we've seen the end of the story, and it will be now up to the High Court, sitting as the Court of Disputed Returns, to resolve this matter. But let's hope that common sense prevails.
Well, the Prime Minister sounded very confident that Barnaby Joyce would be cleared. I mean, he was basically preempting any decision by the High Court. Some have questioned the role there, whether that was appropriate. Georgina, how anxious do you think the Prime Minister is ahead of this High Court meeting on Thursday?
Well, you're right, Tom. He sounds incredibly confident. I mean, the difficulty with all these citizenship revelations is that none of them are activated citizenships. They're all citizenships that the individuals didn't particularly know about. So I think that's where the High Court may, Stephen Donohue's advice to Malcolm Turnbull is probably that the High Court will say, well, they're not necessarily taking advantage of that citizenship. They're not even aware of that citizenship. So therefore, given they've renounced it, we'll let this pass. I mean, that is a very activist judiciary to take that interpretation. But that seems to be the basis of Malcolm Turnbull's confidence. I would just add, though, that the two major parties, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, and Tom, your experience speaks to this too, have very rigorous checks, and you can see that this has hit the smaller parties, the National Party, the Greens, and One Nation, and the Xenophon team, where they don't have that infrastructure, they don't necessarily have the procedures and understanding experience in place.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I tell you what, we're subjecting these elected members to a lot of scrutiny here, but Jacinta, to try to broaden it out to public servants. I mean, you had a long career but you've had a career as a senior public servant, presumably in security-sensitive roles. I mean, how stringent is the vetting of Commonwealth public service when it comes to dual citizenship?
Well, it takes different levels, but as you mentioned, just to be an employee in the Commonwealth, you have to be a permanent resident, an Australian citizen, or intending to be an Australian citizen, which means you're a permanent resident on the pass. So, and then that goes up in levels depending upon the particular area you're working in. And anyone who works in a security-sensitive area and has a clearance has to have Australian citizenship. And any nature of dual citizenship is put under the microscope in terms of what that might mean about private loyalty. And I think this is actually the core of the issue. Section 44 isn't just about citizenship. It's about any other form of influence or loyalty that may play upon our elected members doing anything other than what is in the best interest of Australians. And it's very important that that remains front and centre. One thing that's interesting, though, that really occurs to me, I've looked into citizenship a lot in relation to cancellation of citizenship for terrorist offenders, which we have. As of last year, and Khalid Sharif, of course, was the first person to have his citizenship cancelled. And what's interesting is that in the history of Australia's citizenship, it was only in the 80s that Australians were not deemed to be British subjects as well as being Australian citizens. And it was only in 1984 that someone seeking to move to Australia and take up Australian citizenship didn't have to renounce their other citizenship.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
For Australian nationals, it was 2002. So I'm born in Australian by birth, and this relates to, I think, part of the confidence that the PM has on Barnaby Joyce and others.
We are out of time, Jacinta. I'm so sorry to cut you off. That was a fascinating input there on this very intriguing debate. Jacinta, Georgina, Tony, great so much.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any wriggle room in the Constitution. It says that no person who has any allegiance to any foreign power shall be deemed eligible to sit in any Australian Parliament. 3 weeks ago, when Barney Baby Joyce was talking about Penny Waters and Scott Ludlam having resigned from Parliament because they discovered that one was a secret Kiwi and the other was a secret Canadian, Barnaby Joyce's comment was, ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law. Suddenly he turns out to be a secret Kiwi and he's all, oh, but I didn't know. Fact of the matter is, the Constitution was written that way because Australia used to be a penal colony, and Australians are not ever going to stand still to be ruled by foreign powers with foreign interests at heart. On the one hand, if you are allegedly so interested in politics that you want to stand for Parliament, but simultaneously so ignorant, arrogant, lazy, smug, complacent that you can't be bothered discovering what country you personally are a citizen of, so that you then make a false statutory declaration or a false affidavit to the effect that you are an Australian citizen and you have no foreign allegiances when you first apply to stand for Parliament. Now, if it's a statutory declaration, then they can't ever stand for Parliament again, because a false statutory declaration carries, I think it's a 2-year jail sentence maximum. And the law on standing for Parliament's a bit like the law for getting registered as a nurse. You can't get registered to be a general nurse or any kind of nurse in New South Wales if you have been previously found guilty of any crime carrying more than 6 months in jail or more than $1,000 worth of fines. If you are registered and you subsequently become convicted of such an offence, an indictable offence, then you can be debarred from the register, you can be knocked off it. Same with Parliament. You can be found guilty of something having a penalty of less than 6 months and sit in Parliament. Just like if you are an undischarged bankrupt, you can't sit there. If the bankruptcy proceedings have been completed, then you can after you've been bankrupt. But not many people are going to vote for you because you went bankrupt. Although Donald Trump's been bankrupt about 6 times. So, what was I going on about? If on the other hand, if you're too slack to know what country you're a citizen of, you shouldn't be in Parliament. If on the other hand, you've got a dual citizen who's been living here all of their life and they'd really like to stand for Parliament, but they just don't want to give up their Dutch or Argentine or Italian citizenship because they still, at heart, they feel a bit Argentinian. That's exactly perfectly the reason why the clause is in the Constitution. We don't want anybody who's got any divided loyalties. So we don't want idiots and we don't want secret fifth columnists. Barnaby Joyce, Fiona Nash, Scott Ludlam, Penny Waters, Nick Xenophon, they all come under the heading of complacent, smug idiots, buffoons who don't know what country they live in. Regards the business of trying to protect against terrorist attacks, and like if somebody runs into a crowd of people and it's a 50-year-old who's had a medical event, that's not terrorism, even though 4 people get put in hospital. If somebody's on his way to go to court on a domestic violence issue and he decides that he doesn't want to go to court, he wants to do wheelies in the intersections and then have an argument with his girlfriend and then mount the footpath and kill 6 people in front of the Melbourne railway station, that's not terrorism. That's a Christian Greek Melbourne boy having a bad hair day. But if somebody has a shotgun and pretends to have a bomb and shoots one waiter in a coffee shop, that's terrorism. It's not got anything to do with the death count as to whether it's terrorism or not. The deciding factor is, has the outrageous interpersonal, spontaneous violence against random individuals, has it been conducted in order to accomplish some sort of a coherent furtherance of a cause, an ideological cause, a religious cause, a political cause, some kind of a cause, or is it just some cranky pants lunatic throwing a temper tantrum? It strikes me as ridiculous to call some things terrorism and other things not terrorism. It's all temper tantrumism. And the people that get called terrorists are people who, for some reason, take it upon themselves to punish the people that they disagree with. They feel it is their job, like the Royal Air Force Bomber Command who dropped explosives onto German women and children and civilians and grandmothers during World War II. They were punishing the Germans for having voted for Hitler, for having agreed to pay tax to the Nazi government, for obeying the Nazi government, for supporting the Nazis. They were punishing them. That's why the Germans called them Terrorfliegerinnen, terror flyers. That's where the word was invented by Goebbels, PhD, Minister for Propaganda and Information. In 1942, he invented the word terrorist. And ever since then, terrorist is what losers call somebody who uses any tactics or strategy or weapons that there's no effective defence against. And there is no effective defence against some idiot deciding to throw a cranky pants attack. When they do that, in a civilization which has fossil fuels refined and distilled in several different grades, and anybody can buy a gas cylinder or drive their car at stupid places and stupid speeds. Ah, well, ciao.